My sister bribed the board to betray me and steal our company, but I burned her down with a brutal exposé. It didn't happen overnight. The fall was silent, subtle, like a tide pulling back before the wrecking wave. My sister, Rebecca, always played her role well, smiles at meetings, supportive comments in public, and just enough charm to win over the press. But beneath all that, resentment had been simmering for years. Our father never made it a secret who he believed in. It wasn't her. I was the one he chose to sit beside him during negotiations. I was the one given access to the expansion files, the acquisitions, the long-term vision that would reshape our father's manufacturing business into a multi-sector titan. She handled the social side, the brand partnerships, the ribbon cuttings. I built the foundation. She posed in front of it. When he passed, I expected some friction, but she played it smooth. At first, she stayed close, offered to help manage transition planning, kept her voice measured during executive calls. For months, everything looked stable. The board was steady, the shareholders supportive, the numbers solid. But something didn't feel right. Conversations with key directors began to shift. Suggestions were offered that subtly minimized my authority, calls for collective decision-making, concerns about my over-centralized vision. I noticed meetings started happening without me. Scheduled calls got rescheduled, then quietly dropped. My CTO, someone I mentored from his first day, suddenly tendered his resignation with no clear reason. Then came the vote. A quiet, clinical coup masked as a leadership restructure. No warning, no debate. The directors convened without my knowledge, citing concerns about strategic misalignment, and in a blink, I was out. Not fired, just replaced. She walked into the boardroom the next morning wearing one of her trademark pale suits, sat down in my chair, and folded her hands like she'd always belonged there. Her first words were to thank me for paving the way. Her second were to announce a change in direction. But I had seen it coming. I wasn't blindsided. I was prepared. For nearly a year, I'd been tracking changes in board behavior, cross-referencing timestamps of closed-door meetings, documenting contradictions in the financial statements. I had a private server that stored audio recordings, duplicate files, and an untouched email archive. My father raised me to trust, but never blindly. So I didn't just build the company. I built a vault. The paper trail was meticulous. A director in Chicago took a 7-figure wire transfer through a Cayman subsidiary. Another one received a vacation property under an anonymous LLC registered 3 months before the vote. The so-called independent audit team had direct ties to a consultancy my sister had used during her early PR campaigns. Nothing was clean. Every move was tangled in proof of manipulation. And every piece of it was mine. I didn't go to the board first. I went to the media. Not a whisper in some obscure blog. A full exposé authored under my name, backed by documents, testimonies, and a digital folder that no legal team could scrub in time. I dropped it all at once. Early morning release. Major networks alerted. 3 press calls scheduled before noon. The story spread like an oil fire, fast, ugly, unstoppable. Within 48 hours, shareholders were in panic mode. Clients started pulling contracts. The press cornered her in front of headquarters while she tried to issue a denial that unraveled with every sentence. The board called an emergency session, but it was too late. The damage was public, undeniable, and irreversible. She was removed by the same vote she once bought. Lawsuits followed. Federal inquiries opened. Partners distanced themselves so quickly you'd think her name was poison. Her reputation, built on curated appearances and borrowed prestige, crumbled into ash. And me? I didn't return to the boardroom. I didn't fight for the chair she stole. I met with the remaining directors, those who hadn't sold out and quietly acquired their voting rights through personal buyouts and proxy agreements. By the time they realized what I was doing, I already held the majority. She thought she could take my company by playing a smarter game. She never realized I built the boardroom to be my battlefield long before she walked into it. And now I wasn't rebuilding. I was clearing the ruins. The fallout didn't settle quietly. The exposé had torn through the industry like a shockwave, but the debris it kicked up was heavier than I anticipated. Clients weren't just nervous, they were furious. Some demanded audits of their own. Others paused payments, waiting to see if their contracts had been tied to anything Rebecca touched. Lawyers showed up with questions they already had answers to, just to test if I would flinch. I didn't. I had every file in order. But even with her out, the company wasn't stable. Not yet. The day after the board officially removed her, I met with Thomas Laird, our interim CFO, in the lower conference room. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days, and I didn't blame him. The financial systems were still under her configuration. Entire expense chains were rerouted through holding firms we had never vetted. There were redundancies that didn't make sense and departments operating with dual authority. What's buried deeper? I asked him, tapping the folder he brought in. He flipped it open without speaking, revealing a list of payments tagged with obscure vendor names. Not one had a business registration we could confirm. Some went back 5 years, longer than I thought her scheme had been in motion. She started planting these before Dad even got sick, Thomas said, his tone careful. These accounts were created while he was still active, but I think he trusted her to handle secondary expenses. She had played the long game. Not just posturing and bribes, but infrastructure. She had quietly built her own shadow system beneath the legitimate structure of the company. Separate chains of supply, dual vendor pathways, and even a secondary payroll we couldn't trace to any current employees. It wasn't about stealing the company. She had been building her own version of it from within. My father hadn't noticed, but I did now. I called for a full forensic sweep. Every system, every contract, every employee background check redone from scratch. No more internal reviews. We hired an external firm with no past ties to either of us. I gave them unrestricted access and told them I didn't want summaries. I wanted names. Within a week, 26 names came back flagged. Senior staff, mid-level managers, even 2 executive assistants, people she had placed or influenced. Some were subtle. Others were direct moles. The worst part? Most of them were still employed and had continued reporting back to her. Even with her reputation in flames, she had managed to maintain communication lines. She wasn't trying to recover her role. She was trying to survive the collapse by shifting resources out of my reach. I didn't go public with that information. Not yet. I needed to see where her hand reached next. I started calling in departments one at a time. Not in mass meetings, not in memos. Quiet, direct conversations. I met with operations in the sub-level project room, marketing in the unfinished West Wing, logistics in the loading dock. Each time, I changed locations. I needed to be unpredictable. And with each meeting, I started spotting patterns, projects suddenly stalled, invoices duplicated, third-party consultants mysteriously unavailable. She was still active. And I wasn't just patching damage, I was chasing a live threat. Then came the package. Delivered without a name. No sender. Just a plain brown envelope slid under my office door while I was on a call. Inside were 3 photographs, grainy, black and white, but recent. One showed her sitting with Leonard Dre, one of our oldest shareholders, in a quiet corner of an unfamiliar office. The second showed her entering a private elevator with a man I recognized as the chief compliance officer of a rival firm. The third was of me leaving headquarters late, alone, from the side entrance. A warning. She wasn't just gathering allies. She was watching me. That changed everything. I called in David Wren, my private legal strategist, and told him to start drafting asset locks. Not just freezes on her holdings, we already had those pending. I wanted blockades on every partner firm she had ever worked with. Any company she had ties to, I wanted to either buy or dismantle. Quietly. Cleanly. But it wasn't enough to cut her off. I needed to know what she was still holding. And I knew exactly where her core was hidden, her old office in our secondary headquarters in Portland. It had been listed as inactive for over a year, but her assistant, one of the flagged names, still accessed it regularly. I didn't wait for a warrant. I flew out that night, took 2 security leads with me, and used the master executive keycard my father had left in a locked case marked for emergency only. The place looked untouched. Furniture polished, files arranged, not a single light bulb out of place. But it was fake. Too perfect. Her personal system was still running, and behind the locked cabinet near the far wall, I found it, an old desktop terminal that wasn't connected to the company network. This was her archive, and it wasn't just financial. Messages, personal logs, drafted statements she never released, blackmail files, names of people she had paid and those she had threatened. Even a recorded call with a former compliance auditor that included him admitting to falsifying quarterly reports on her request. She had documented everything, not as a fallback, as leverage. Every deal she made, every bribe, every manipulation stored here. Not to destroy the company, but to hold it hostage if she ever lost control. It was her insurance policy. I took everything, disconnected the hard drive, boxed the files, and left no trace behind. The room remained undisturbed to anyone who would check. On the flight back, I didn't say a word. I spent the hours reading her personal notes. The worst part? She didn't hate me for taking the company. She hated me because she believed I never respected her. And maybe she was right. I saw her as a figurehead, someone who played the social role but never understood the mechanics. But she understood more than I gave her credit for. She knew people. She could read motivations in silence, find weaknesses behind smiles. Where I built with structure, she built with influence. I never acknowledged that, but it didn't change what she did. She betrayed the company. She betrayed our father. And she betrayed me. The next morning, I didn't go back to the office. I went to Leonard Dre's estate. No warning. No security. I walked in unannounced during his morning meeting with junior analysts and waited until he noticed me. When he finally waved them out, I handed him a folder with 3 files, the ones from the archive showing his involvement with Rebecca's plan. "I'm not here to negotiate," I said. "You have 3 days to withdraw all shares and resign from the board. If you don't, this goes public." He didn't argue. He knew the damage. He had been a legacy name in the firm since before I was born, but he was also a man who understood timing. His resignation came that afternoon. Quiet. Clean. I released nothing, but I added him to the list. She still had moves left, but now she had no coverage. And I wasn't done yet. The asset traces revealed one more detail we hadn't noticed: a quiet funnel of capital moving through a shell in Arizona. It looked like a dormant property investment group, but its movement patterns matched one of the holding firms she used during the bribe campaign. I sent a team down. What they found was a front, a rented office space used once a week, staffed by 2 assistants working under fake names. Inside were documents for a startup she had funded using stolen development funds from our renewable tech division. She wasn't just trying to hold influence. She was trying to launch a rival entity, one built with our stolen blueprints. I didn't hesitate. That same night, I filed a corporate injunction, flagged the group with the Federal Office for Trade Theft, and issued cease and desist notices to all third-party suppliers connected to it. I didn't wait for approval from the board. I didn't need it. By the time her legal team responded, the damage was irreversible. She had nothing left to stand on. But I wasn't finished. There was still one more name I hadn't touched. Owen Greaves, our lead technology strategist. The only executive who hadn't taken a side publicly. He kept his mouth shut during the takeover, remained in position when the board flipped, and avoided every conflict since. But the archive listed him as confirmed passive ally. That meant she expected him to stay loyal without exposing himself. I scheduled a meeting. Just the 2 of us. No formal agenda. I watched him walk in with that same calm expression he always wore, neutral, unreadable. He sat down, opened his notepad, and waited. I dropped the file on the table. He didn't move. "You played it well," I said. "But she's gone. And if you want to stay here, I need full disclosure." Still nothing. Then finally he spoke. "I never took anything from her," he said slowly. "But I didn't stop her either. That was enough. I didn't fire him. I reassigned him, demoted him to project lead on an internal system overhaul, reporting directly to someone who used to work under him. I needed to keep him close, not for revenge, for containment. Because even with everything burned down, I didn't believe she was done. People like Rebecca don't go quietly. They disappear. Then they reappear with something new. And I was going to be ready when she did. It ended the way it started, quietly. No alarms. No public blowouts. No dramatic confrontations. Just moves made behind walls, words spoken in private, and the slow tightening of a noose that had been forming long before she even knew it. A week after shutting down the Arizona operation, I received a message. Not from Rebecca. From someone using an encrypted relay channel traced through 2 obscured locations in Toronto and Amsterdam. The email didn't ask for negotiation or deny anything. It simply read, "We should talk. One time. No threats." You know where? She meant the old lake house. Our family didn't use it anymore. It sat empty after Dad passed, left untouched, not because of sentiment, but because neither of us could bear the silence inside it. We used to go there in the summers. He'd make us attend planning sessions even as kids, and she'd complain while secretly memorizing everything he said. I hadn't been back since the funeral. I went alone. When I arrived, the air was still. The driveway was clean, which meant she'd been maintaining it in secret. The lights were off, but the front door was unlocked. I stepped inside. The furniture hadn't moved. Not even the photograph of Dad by the fireplace had been dusted off. She was sitting in the den, in the same chair he used to use during meetings. No greeting. No smile. "You got what you wanted," she said without looking at me. "You mean the company you tried to steal?" She didn't react. Just shifted in her seat slightly, as if bracing for the conversation to hurt more than she was willing to admit. "I never wanted the company the way you did," she said. "I wanted to be seen as more than decoration. You built a side empire using stolen funds. You bribed the board. You rewrote the reports. That's not insecurity. That's sabotage." She finally looked at me. No venom. Just tired eyes. "I knew you were watching. I always knew. But I kept going because I thought you'd respect me more if I beat you at your own game." I shook my head. "You didn't beat me. You betrayed every principle Dad built this company on. You used his death as your opportunity." Her jaw tightened. I could see it. She wanted to defend herself, spin it somehow, turn it into a misunderstanding. But she didn't. She just sat there in silence, knowing there was nothing she could say that would erase what had already been exposed. "What now?" she asked finally. "You disappear. No more shell companies. No more side projects. You sign over what's left. You stay away from the industry. And in return, I don't pursue criminal charges." Her laugh was dry. "You already buried me publicly. That was business. This would be personal." She stood up, walked past me toward the window overlooking the lake. She didn't speak for a full minute. "I was ready to run," she said. "You knew that, right? I had enough hidden in offshore accounts to start over. I found those accounts. They've been locked since last Thursday." She turned sharply, but I wasn't bluffing. She could see it in my face. Her last escape had been sealed without a trace. Her network dismantled. Her leverage neutralized. She sat back down slowly. "You've always been better at cleaning up messes. You made this one." The conversation ended without a conclusion. No apology. No plea for forgiveness. Just silence. I left her there. Back in the city, I initiated the final phase. First, I finalized the restructuring. All flagged personnel were either terminated or reassigned under monitored contracts. Every department head signed new disclosure agreements. We removed any trace of shared systems that could be exploited. IT rolled out a hard reset on every device registered under the prior executive regime. Then I turned inward. I met with every remaining board member individually. I didn't ask for loyalty. I made it clear they had one chance to choose a future with stability or risk being caught in the next wave if another betrayal surfaced. Those who hesitated were replaced by candidates vetted through outside sources I trusted. The board became leaner, smarter, and, most importantly, independent of her influence. The shareholders, once skittish and doubting, rallied behind the comeback story. Quarterly numbers stabilized. Press coverage shifted from scandal to recovery. A lead article even ran the headline, "The Phoenix Company, How One CEO Reclaimed a Fallen Legacy." But I didn't celebrate, because there was one last move to make. I filed a petition to dissolve all companies she had registered under aliases formally, legally, and permanently. This wasn't a press stunt. It wasn't a smear campaign. It was a calculated, strategic move to prevent her from ever stepping into this space again. And once the documents were verified and approved, I delivered the final file directly to her residence. No note, just the papers. It took her 3 days to respond. Her lawyer sent back a signed declaration stating she would forfeit her remaining shares, dissolve all active ventures, and abstain from re-entering the industry indefinitely. No resistance. No negotiations. It was over. For good. I didn't tell the public. I didn't need a headline. She vanished from the sector without fanfare. Her name faded from meeting rooms, news feeds, and investor circles. Former allies stopped returning her calls. Partners severed ties quietly. In a matter of months, she became a ghost in the industry she once tried to conquer. The company thrived. New deals came in. Former clients returned. Reputation rebuilt. The board, now fully aligned, stood behind me without hesitation. But I never sat back in the chair again. I appointed a new CEO, someone younger, sharp, untouched by the family shadow. I moved into a new role, chairman. No title on my door. No public spotlight. Because I didn't need it. This wasn't about power. It wasn't about revenge. It was about precision. She tried to destroy the legacy I built. I didn't just survive. I ended her game completely. And I did it without raising my voice. Because I don't rebuild what's broken. I remove what caused the break.